All right, Mr. Wood, the state can call its next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Brandon Boudreaux.
And who will be conducting direct examination?
I will, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, thank you, Mr. Boudreaux. If you'll come around this way and be seated in the seat to my left. All right, just a few quick instructions. We're making a record of the case, so please make verbal responses to any questions. Say yes or no instead of shaking your head. For example, please try to avoid talking at the same time anyone is questioning you. And with that in mind, Ms. Smith, you can inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Can you introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the grand jury, please?
Yeah, my name's Brandon Boudreaux. I'm from Mesa, Arizona.
Okay. Sir, could you spell your last name, please?
Boudreaux.
Okay. Mr. Boudreaux, are you married?
I am.
How many times have you been married?
Twice.
Okay. Let's.
Sure. Sorry.
Okay. And I think it'll help if you just lean just a little forward. It might be a little uncomfortable, but lots of people need to hear. Okay. All right. And you said you'd been married twice. Let's talk about your first marriage. Who were you married to?
Melanie Cope at the time. She became Boudreaux.
Okay. And with your marriage to Melanie Boudreaux, did you have any children?
I did.
How many?
4.
Okay. And what are their ages?
I have Braxton, who is 13, Brighton, who's 9, Blake, who's 7, and Breeze, who just turned 6.
Okay. How long were you married to Melanie?
A little over 10 years.
Okay. What year did you marry?
2008.
Okay. And during that time, did you meet her family?
I did, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us who you remember or who you had relations with?
I mean, she has a big family, so her mom passed away when she was young, so I met her birth mom's family, her dad's family, and then her stepmom's family.
When you say her birth mom's family, what are their names?
The Coxes.
Okay. And if you could just scooch just a little closer. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
I know, it's all right. And so the Coxes, what are their names, please?
Barry and Janice Cox are her, would that be her grandparents? And then Adam Cox, Summer Shiflett, Lori Vallow, and Alex Cox.
Okay. And those 4 people are who to Melanie and therefore were to you?
They would be her aunts and uncles.
Okay. Therefore, your aunts and uncles in-laws?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you spend much time with Lori's aunts and uncles? I mean, Melanie's aunts and uncles?
Yes. We, before we got married, I met them in Arizona. And we would spend, most holidays together. We would, when I first, right after I was married, I moved down to Arizona. I actually lived with Lori for a while, and her husband, Charles.
Okay. So when you say Lori, do you see the person you recognize and knew through marriage as Lori Vallow here in the courtroom today?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Can you please point her out and describe an item of her clothing?
She's sitting over on my right with glasses on.
Okay. Your Honor, may the What table, just so that the record's real clear?
The second table.
Okay. How many people are at it?
There's 3.
Okay. Your Honor, may the record reflect he's identified the defendant, please?
Yes, that's reflected now in the record.
Thank you. Now, you said you'd spent time in Ms. Vallow's home with Charles, correct?
Yes.
All right. And at that time, was he her husband?
Yes.
All right. How well did you get to know them?
Very well. We just spent a lot of time together.
Okay. When you say we, what does that mean?
Me and my family,
Okay.
my wife at the time, and my children.
Okay. And did you get to know her children, Ms. Vallow's children?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. What were their names?
There's Colby, Tylee, and JJ.
And when you say you got to know them, did your kids also interact with their cousins?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. They spent a lot of time together. My oldest, Braxton, was pretty close with JJ. I think, JJ looked up to him a lot, and they spent a lot of time together.
So would they spend any time in each other's homes?
Yeah. JJ he wasn't super interactive as he had autism, so he wasn't always like incredibly interactive, but he seemed to love hanging out with my kids, and specifically Braxton and Brighton. As he got older, he started to be able to interact a little more, and he would always he kind of had 2 fascinations. One was with traveling. He always said everybody always got him suitcases. He had suitcases everywhere. And the other was coming and hanging out with Braxton. He would always ask for that, and they had a great time when they spent time together.
Okay. And what about Tylee?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Tylee as well. I watched her grow up. I met her when she was just little, and then got to watch her kind of grow into a teenager.
Did you have any special sort of religious connection to Tylee?
Yeah. In our church, when you turn 8, you can get baptized if you choose. And so when she turned 8, she decided to get baptized, and for whatever reason, Charles wasn't comfortable doing the baptism. And so they had asked me, and I of course said yes, I would be honored to baptize her.
And you say in your church, what church is that? What's your faith?
I go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay. And was Tylee baptized into that church?
She was, yes.
Okay. Were you and your wife members of the Church of Latter-day Saints?
Yeah, we were.
Okay. And to your knowledge, what about Mr. and Mrs. Vallow?
Yes, as well.
Okay. Did you, what about the relationship sort of that you observed between Melanie Boudreaux and Lori Vallow? What was that like?
Yeah. Melanie, she kind of had like an affinity towards Lori. She always kind of she looked at her kind of less like an aunt figure and almost more like a mom figure. She was always wanting to be like her.
Did you get along with Charles?
Yeah, really well. Charles and I both had a passion for sales and business, and we connected well in that. And we just both loved our families, and so it was very easy for us to spend time together.
So it wasn't uncommon that the Boudreaux and the Vallows would get together and get along?
Yeah, we would. There was years where they lived by us, and we would usually see each other maybe once a month or more. And then there was times when they lived further away, but we would travel to each other's homes, stay in each other's homes when we went, and wasn't uncommon to spend a week, or more at each other's homes.
Did you spend holidays together?
Yes.
Okay. What was the last Christmas that the Boudreaux and the Vallows spent together?
That would have been in 2018.
Okay. Was that a typical Christmas for the two couples?
No, it was definitely different at that point.
Why?
When you get really close with people, you kind of become comfortable and you let your guard down, and your body language is more relaxed and more comfortable, and it just, everything kind of, I don't know how to, it can be so fluid. You can see each other and pick right up where you left off. But everybody feels like they know everything about each other, almost like it's just, you're so, you know each other so well that it's like memory, if you will. But in that one, it was very, well, there was Melanie Gibb who was there, who I'd never met before, and never heard anything about.
So let me stop you there and let me ask. So you said it wasn't the same as before. Were there other people there for this holiday?
Yeah, Melanie Gibb was there with her family, who I didn't really know her, and the rest of us were all, it just we didn't feel close. The body language was very, in the way that the conversations flowed and everything just felt very distant.
Now, around this time, were you and your wife active in your church or in your ward?
Yeah.
Okay. Had you been active with the Vallows in your faith?
Could you maybe expound on that?
Sure. Had you and the Vallows shared that faith and shared activities at church?
Yeah, we definitely had done things at church together.
Okay. And did your wife's let's take it one at a time. Did your wife's activity in religious events increase around this time, around that Christmas?
Yeah, a little bit before it actually, but
can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So when we first got married, my wife's kind of religious level was kind of low. She didn't enjoy going to church. It wasn't something that she. It was more me pushing going to church. I felt like I got like a little bit of a benefit from it, and she didn't really enjoy it that much. And so for most of our marriage, it was kind of me pushing going to church. But kind of in the fall of that year.
We're talking 2018.
Yeah, sorry. In the fall of 2018, she started getting really passionate about going to church and about different ideas within the church. She started going to these things she was calling firesides.
When you say calling firesides, are firesides within the LDS faith? Are those a common practice?
So in the LDS faith, the way our setup is organized is our congregation's called a ward, and there's usually some leaders inside the ward, and then there's a bigger congregation called a stake, and inside of that, usually ecclesiastical leaders organize the regular Sunday events, but you also occasionally will have like they call them firesides, but like a special event that focuses on something around our belief. And in this case,
so were the events that your wife attending called firesides sort of part of the organized part of your church?
No, and that's I guess what started kind of sticking out to me was she would go to these things that she was calling firesides, but they weren't put on by the church. They didn't have any ecclesiastical connection, like there wasn't anything like that, but they were using that term. And she was coming home with kind of different ideas of what she was going to do to be a faithful member of the church.
Okay. Was the defendant at some of these firesides?
Yes.
Okay. Did Charles go to any of these fireside talks?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And were you invited?
No, I had a discussion with Melanie, and she told me that these were her thing, and she didn't want me to go, and it was very clear that I wasn't welcome to come.
To your memory, who was attending some of these, extra church activities?
Besides Melanie and Lori.
Besides Melanie and Lori?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It sounds like he doesn't have information as to who was there. Any information that he would have gotten would have been hearsay.
I'll sustain that. I think there's inadequate foundation.
Were you aware of who attended some of these events?
Not in the present, but afterwards, yes.
Okay. Did any of the people who later went to those told you they had attended those?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Melanie Gibb later where she told me she went to those.
Okay.
Again, it's hearsay.
And that will be stricken as hearsay,
Okay.
statement of what another said.
All right. But you weren't allowed to go to these talks?
Correct.
All right. And when you say some of the ideas your wife came back with, did they center around particular topics?
Yeah, the things that were she felt a need to go to the temple every single day, which is a little bit extreme. And like in our faith, we believe in going to the temple, and I think regular attendance can be good. It's something where you go and kind of practice ritualistically, like your faith, and show God that you are trying to keep promises to Him. And so it's a good thing to do, but
Is it unusual to go every single day?
Very, and it got even more extreme. Like she would have to go during like our family trips to Disneyland or things like that just were very, very overwhelming. She had to focus on this idea that like the world could end soon, and we had a disagreement about buying $10,000 worth of food storage right away. Things that just seemed extreme.
Okay. And so in this situation, you've been to Christmas, and your wife is participating in these extra religious events. Did that affect the situation between sort of the Boudreaux and the Vallows going into 2019?
Yeah, I guess it got a little bit harder for us.
Why?
Excuse me.
Do you need some water?
Yeah, actually.
Do you mind, Your Honor, if he takes a second?
Not at all. It's there for the witness.
Thanks.
Can you ask me that question again?
In going into 2019, did the situation between the Boudreaux and the Vallows, was it affected by this religious activity or the sort of atmosphere at Christmas?
Yeah, it just kind of got more bizarre. Into 2019, in January we got a call and text messages from Lori and Charles that Lori was accusing him of cheating and infidelity.
Okay. How did you respond to that situation?
Well, it was kind of complicated.
Why?
For me, well, because initially when all of this started happening, I wasn't really I wasn't even aware of it the night that it happened. And when I became aware of it, it just seemed odd. There was it seemed kind of like it just went from 0 to 100 really quick. Like Lori had removed all the money from their account. She had.
So let me stop you there and break it up. So did that affect the situation with your family?
Yeah, it did. My wife was very adamant that we weren't going to take sides.
And did you respect Melanie's wishes on that?
Yeah, I did my best. Yes.
Okay. And did there come a time during this period that you would see Lori in the late winter, early spring of 2019?
I didn't see Lori very much at all, but I did see Charles.
Okay. So how often would you see Charles?
He would bring JJ over to play a couple times. He had JJ. Lori wasn't with JJ at the time. I don't know where she went actually.
So Charles would come over to your house with JJ?
Yeah, and
So what would JJ do at the house?
he would play with Braxton and just kind of get a release. JJ was always very high energy. He had to lock everything up when he came so that he couldn't get out of the house or get himself into trouble. So it'd be kind of thorough. It was like having a really big kid that doesn't know how to make certain decisions yet. And so it was a lot of work when he'd come over, but you just loved him, so you did it. But so Braxton kind of always knew that his duty was to play with JJ and entertain him and keep him kind of busy so that he would get into less trouble or get into less things.
Got it. And so did you spend time with Charles when JJ was there?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Let's fast forward to that summer. Did you have occasion to go to a family trip or visit your wife's family in Utah?
Yeah, I did. So I after meeting with Charles those couple times and kind of seeing him go through some painful process, I according as I promised Melanie, I kept asking him not to come over and doing my best to help him, but trying to create distance. And so we actually that summer went out and went to Utah to my wife's sister was going to get married, and we were staying at my in-laws' house.
Okay. Did anything unusual happen at your in-laws' house?
Yeah. So this was in June, and to explain it, on June 23rd, my grandfather passed away of a heart attack, and I got a little bit. His health wasn't great, but it was still a surprise, and so on the 25th, my mom called me to tell me about the funeral. And I had this conversation with Melanie where I told her when it was, and she told me she wasn't going to go to the funeral. She didn't want anything to do with it. And it created kind of a
disagreement between you two?
Yeah, a disagreement. And in that process, this what I thought we were arguing about with her not wanting to go to my grandpa's funeral, not wanting my kids to go, kind of escalated into something completely different. It just kind of cascaded into a bunch of stuff that didn't make any sense and had nothing to do with me or to do with this.
All right. And when you say to do with this, did it lead to some accusations against you?
Yeah. After I took a little break after I felt so emotional about my grandpa. I walked for a while. I came back, and I really wanted to break through and have a honest conversation with her. So I just came and apologized for my feelings and just told her that I would accept her not going to my grandpa's funeral. And I just begged her to talk to me about what was going on and why things were so hard. And she said that if I was honest, then we could work through things. And she said God had revealed some things to her. And so I just said, let's talk about them. What is it? What's between us? And she started out by accusing me of hacking her Aunt Lori's computer.
Had you hacked her Aunt Lori's computer?
No,
Okay.
I don't know anything about hacking, and that was not something I did. It was really illogical, which stuck out to me and frustrated me because I didn't know why it had anything to do with what we were fighting about.
How did that conversation end?
It escalated some more hours, and then I kept trying to talk through it with her, Eventually, her father got involved, and we talked to him, and she wouldn't talk to him with me, but I talked to him, and she was saying she didn't feel safe with me at the house, and she accused me of being a homosexual, which is another thing that didn't make any sense, but Charles had been telling me previously she was going to say,
Okay.
Lori was going to convince her.
Okay, so she made those various accusations. How did it end?
It ended with her going to sleep and me feeling kind of overwhelmed. And finally, I texted Charles and Lori that I was frustrated with them, that I felt like this was on them. And
Did you ever hear back from the defendant?
Lori never answered or responded. Charles talked to me.
Did you, without getting into what somebody told you, what day was this?
June 25th and in past midnight, so into the 26th.
Okay. Did you have additional, and that's 26th of June, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have additional conversations with Charles in the following few days?
I did. I talked to him again after I kind of worked through some stuff with my dad and my ecclesiastical leader, and I went to a counseling session. I called him. Oh, sorry. With my dad, with my ecclesiastical leader, our bishop is what we call him, and then I went to a counseling session, just feeling a little overwhelmed, and then I called Charles that night and talked to him. That was the last time I talked to him, and just I felt kind of maybe like he was the only person who knew what I was going through, because he'd gone through all these things earlier, and just told him I was sorry for not being there.
Because you'd kept your distance at your wife's request.
Yeah.
Okay. You said that's the last time you talked to him. You didn't talk to him again before he died?
No.
Okay. After Charles died, did you have contact with the defendant, Lori Vallow?
No.
Okay. After Charles died, did you have contact with JJ and Tylee?
No.
Okay. How did it progress for you in your relationship with your wife? Did you eventually reconcile, or did you divorce?
No, we ended up divorcing.
Okay. When did you divorce?
Well, we did a mediated divorce, so we started the process after I got back from my grandpa's funeral. She left. She just took our car home, so I took my kids and flew home. And when I got home, she let me know that we had to do a mediated divorce. We had to do a divorce, and so that would have been in July. I started going through the process, and so we met. I found a mediator after consulting some people and hearing that would be the lowest conflict way to divorce. I tried to follow through with that, so we went through that process, and that started. I can't say exactly which day, but probably around the 1st of July.
And then did you continue working on the divorce and separation through that summer and fall?
I did, yes.
Okay. And where were you living in the end of September and beginning of October of 2019?
At the end of September, I was selling my house, my home that we had bought together. I had moved Melanie to a rental property. And then as soon as I sold my house, I got a rental property as well for the time being, just to try to create some stability. I rented a property right back in where my old ward was, where I had lived before.
Okay. And so how did that situation work out? Were you able to share custody?
It was complicated. She was just so standoffish, so it was really hard for me to, like, when I was showing the house, we had agreed that I would go see my kids and that I could put them to bed each night, but she wouldn't actually let me in her home. She said she was scared of me. And so I didn't get a lot of time with my kids up until I sold my house, at which time I got my house ready really fast, my new home, so I could have my kids in there. And
Did there something occur at the beginning of October of 2019 that affected that situation?
yeah,
What? What?
October 2nd, someone parked in front of my house and shot at me.
Okay. What had you done that morning?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to relevancy. I don't know what this has to do with the case at hand.
Let me
May
have a
we
quick
approach?
Yeah, a quick sidebar with counsel on this issue. All right, counsel, there's a ruling under advisement. The court's going to review some previous research and rulings I've made in the case to determine this, so this will be the time we'll use for our mid-afternoon break. We are going to go till 3:30 today, so we'll try to keep this break to around 15 to 20 minutes to allow the juries to break as well, and then we'll come back on the record with additional questioning. So everyone please rise for the jury. All right. All right, thank you. We're going back on the record, case CR 22-211624, State of Idaho versus Lori Vallow. There's been an objection raised that relates to issues that have previously been brought before the court in motions in limine and motions by the state in regards to 404B evidence. The court finds it appropriate to take up a argument and ruling on the issue at this point outside of the presence of the jurors who have been excused for a mid-afternoon break. So there was an objection raised by the defense. I'd like to hear the response from the state, and then I'll allow a rebuttal argument from the defense before making a ruling.
I'll try my microphone. And the court wants a out in public response in front of the witness. Yes. Okay. Happy to. Your Honor, the state believes that this is part of a common scheme and plan. The defendant, with her co-conspirators, conspired to cause the death of multiple individuals in her world. She is charged specifically with the death of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. She's charged with conspiracy on those issues. And the state's belief in the electronic evidence, the telephone evidence, the witness testimonies through those people who participated in these conversations clearly establish a conspiracy to remove individuals who were obstacles to her future life together with Chad Daybell, and to remove obstacles to their plan for this life together. The shooting of at and killing of spouses of individuals who were part of this group was part of this common scheme or plan. The financial benefit to Ms. Vallow Daybell's niece at the death of her soon-to-be ex-husband would have helped finance some of the defendant's travels, lives, and movement on in the future. There will be multiple witnesses who discuss that the defendant talked to people that Melanie Boudreaux and her money would take care of them, that Melanie Boudreaux and her money would help aid the group's plans for the future. And fundamentally, it is part of a common scheme or plan. It is far more probative than prejudicial. It is part and parcel. The other piece, just from logic in terms of the law enforcement involvement, the shooting at Mr. Boudreaux is what actively got law enforcement paying attention, what actively got law enforcement looking for JJ and Tylee, and it's core to the presentation of many of the law enforcement's assessments of evidence.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Thomas, the response from the defense.
Just so that I understand, the state is indicating that this is part of a common scheme or plan, and getting rid of spouses is part of the common scheme or plan. Judge, it seems like this is a stretch at best. We'd ask the court not to allow this evidence in. It doesn't, without further foundation through all of these other text messages and whatnot. Mr. Boudreaux can be called after some of these things come in to testify, but at this point, I don't think it's appropriate to allow him to testify about these things without any more foundation.
Your Honor, may I just briefly, this is a chicken or an egg thing. I guarantee you if the state offered those other items, the defense would be saying it's premature because we don't know what happened. And so in reality, we have the witness here. He had a relationship, and the state is abiding by the previous rulings of the court. We brought it to your attention in camera ahead of time. You've given us a ruling in limine, and we are following that ruling.
All right. Well, I do agree it is a chicken and an egg thing, as you mentioned. When looking at this evidence, the court has to consider Rule 404B because it's premised on what may be presented in court. Generally, it's brought up outside the presence of the jury and also in advance of trial. The parties have complied with that procedurally, and so we did have a closed hearing relating to this 404B issue back in February of this year, and on February 22nd, the court issued an oral ruling that as a preliminary matter, I would allow the evidence or not prohibit the evidence under Rule 404B, and also made findings related specifically to this particular witness and what is alleged to have occurred. I've considered whether or not the order of things should require more foundation before we go into it at this point, but I don't really see a better way other than to admonish and caution the state that at this point I'll permit the 404B evidence to be admitted. However, at this stage of the proceedings, there's not really a record that goes into the common scheme or plan in the detail that you've indicated. However, there was a proffer made by the state at the previous ruling, and again a proffer today that that evidence will be forthcoming. So I'll overrule the objection and allow the evidence, but the, I guess, danger for the state there is if sufficient evidence does not come in later to support the allegations that take this outside of 404B, then we may have an issue with the jury having heard this testimony. So the court will rely on the proffers made today and previously in overruling that objection, and I'll allow this line of questioning based on that and my prior finding made at that February 22nd ruling that was briefed and argued by the parties before. So that'll be the court's decision on the evidentiary objection at this point. We'll now bring the jurors in, and just before I do that, I will advise and caution the witness here who, although you've heard a lot of legal argument here, you're still required to just tell only what you know from your own personal experience in answering these questions, and could be subject to further objections if you go outside of that based on anything you heard here in legal argument. So with that in mind, that's the court's ruling at this time. We'll have the jury returned, and then you can continue your examination, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Boudreaux, do you have water up there? Okay.
Rise, please. Yourself ready to cast for your honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, Ms. Smith, you can continue your questioning. I'll remind the witness you're still under oath.
Mr. Boudreaux, you were telling us about being shot at on October 2nd of 2019. Do you remember that? All right, let's back up. Where'd you been that morning?
I had my kids, so when we woke up, I got them ready for school. My two older kids were in elementary school, so I dropped them off at their school. My third youngest went to a daycare preschool, and then I dropped my very youngest off at their mom's house, Melanie.
Melanie Boudreaux's home?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what did you do after that?
After that, I drove to my gym where I worked out.
And this occurred down in Arizona, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then what did you do after going to the gym? Did you head home?
Yeah, so I left the gym and I drove home. As I was driving home, I lived on the second house in I would make a left-hand turn onto my street, and I was the second house in.
Okay, let me ask you, how long had you lived in that home?
Only a few days. Like I said, I sold my house previously, and in a rush to make sure that I got my kids that coming weekend, I had just moved everything myself, and then two of my neighbors noticed me moving. I had just taken
Let me just stop you there. How long had you lived at that house?
only a few days.
Okay. And while you were at that, who knew you lived at that house?
Maybe 5 people.
Okay. And who were those 5?
My neighbors who helped me move, and Melanie, who I had to tell.
Okay. So you're heading home that morning and you turn on the street. What happens next?
As I came around the corner, I noticed there was a Jeep parked right in front of my driveway. My driveway would have been like this, and the Jeep was just parked directly in front of it. And as I was starting to drive towards it, and I would have had to make a left-hand turn into it, I noticed a few things that stood out to me. The first was that it was...
What were the things that you noticed?
Oh, yeah. I noticed that it was parked really closely, almost touching the van that had been parked there the previous several days. It had a Texas license plate, and the Jeep, it was a Jeep Wrangler, and Wranglers have a tire on the back of them. And there was no tire on this one. Instead, the window was kind of hanging open, but like the little tab things were like sitting on the outside of it.
Okay. So you see those things about the Jeep. What happens next?
As I drove forward, the window came up, and I saw a gun with what looked like a silencer. Heard a bang, and my driver's side window shattered. And so my natural reaction, instead of turning left into my driveway, I drove an electric car, so it was very instant, but I just pushed the gas and it just shot me forward.
Okay. What happened after your window is shot out?
I continued to drive, and when you're in a Tesla, the electric car, you let your foot off the gas, it brakes. And so I remember when I hit it, my phone flew forward. And then as I kind of came around the corner, I remember letting my foot off, and it came back, grabbed my phone. I called 911. I went around the corner, and I parked next to the public pool there for a second. And And then I remember as I was talking to the 911 person, I saw the Jeep come around the corner, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I started to try to follow it. And then the person told me that was a bad idea. So I thought it, I'm not 100% sure which, but I went back over and they instructed me to park in front of my house. So I parked in front of my house, and then police arrived.
Okay. Did you give the police the information on that Jeep?
I did, yes.
Okay. And did you follow up with law enforcement down in Arizona?
Yeah,
Thanks. And so now my next question is, did you take any steps after cooperating with law enforcement to identify that Jeep?
I did, yes.
What did you do?
Well, after it took all day to go through, like, once this happened, but after a long amount of time, in the process, I had met with a detective and talked to him about just thoughts that I had about what was going on. He was just asking me, trying to get a handle on it. And, as I was thinking about that, I realized that, Tylee had a Jeep that Charles had bought her with a Texas plate that looked exactly like that. And I knew the VIN number because Charles had given it to me, so I gave that to the police officer, to my detective.
Okay. What color was that Jeep?
It was a grayish green color.
Okay. And did the Jeep you saw had no tire on the back?
Correct.
Okay. Did you take any steps then also to provide it? I'm sorry, you told us you gave the VIN to law enforcement? Forgive me. How did you get that VIN?
Charles had given it to me previously.
Why would he give you a VIN?
I was an insurance agent at the time, and he had given it to me to run insurance across all of their different cars.
Okay. And so you provided that to law enforcement, correct?
I did, yes.
All right. What other steps, if any, did you take to follow up on that Jeep that you believe to be Tylee's Jeep and the shooting at you?
I had called and talked to Adam Cox and Zach Cox because they had also had concerns about everything going on. And
okay, other than talking to somebody, what other steps did you take?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you look at any information on the internet?
About the Jeep?
Or following up on the shooting at you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I did. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, after my shooting, I started to have my beliefs about who I thought did it, and I got concerned about the situation. And so I started thinking back to previous stuff that had happened, and I remembered that in these groups there were people who I didn't know, but I remember there was a bunch of emails Charles had sent me. So I went through and reread those.
Okay. And did you see any names in the emails that you were looking at? When you say those groups, you're talking the groups of people that your wife was meeting in these firesides?
Yeah. She was meeting a bunch of people that didn't necessarily said they were members of the church, but didn't have any necessary connection to the church. And in that process, some of them would, write books or do things, and she would get into some of this stuff. And I remember distinctly inside of these groups, there was emails that were being sent with a group of them. And so I just went back to look at the emails Charles had sent me from there. And most of them came from a Chad Daybell. And since I didn't know who he was, I started Googling his name.
Okay. And in that process of Googling his name, what did you see?
I was just going through some of the things that were there, and I saw on an obituary for a Tammy Daybell.
Okay. And after you saw that, did you take any steps to follow up on what you saw?
Yes. It made me really nervous because Charles...
Let me ask you the question now. What steps did you take?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Because of how I was feeling, my nervousness, I reported it to law enforcement and told them that in my gut something felt wrong, and I just asked them to follow up.
Okay. Now, somewhere in here, did you learn that JJ and Tylee were missing?
Yeah. As things progressed and I came to my opinion about who it was that shot at me, I started to try to be proactive and helping get information, doing whatever I could. And in that process, we found out that no one had seen from Tylee or JJ.
Your Honor, the state is going to ask the court for the admission of State's Exhibit number 5. It has some additional stickers on it that aren't relevant to this hearing, but the sticker is on the back at State's Exhibit 5, which is a self-authenticating document, which is the birth certificate for Tylee Ryan, showing a date of birth of 9/24/2002. And Your Honor, we did not make extra copies of that because it's in an evidence envelope. I certainly can if the court wants.
I've had an opportunity to review that, so. All right, so to be clear, it is marked previously with Exhibit 4 stickers, but this is State's Trial Exhibit 5.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, would you show the witness? Okay. And just for the record, what does that document reflect?
It says Tylee Ryan.
Your Honor, I'm going to object here. I don't think he has personal knowledge of anybody can just read the document.
Well, and I understand the document. First of all, it's not been admitted yet.
Oh, I apologize.
So let's figure out where we are with that.
I apologize. I thought the court had admitted it. The state moved for the admission of State's Exhibit 5.
Any objection?
As to the document being
Admitted.
a birth certificate, we have no objection to the fact that it's a birth certificate.
Okay, so Exhibit 5 is admitted. And then you can continue with your questioning now that it's been admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. On State's Exhibit 5, which has been admitted, what's the date of birth listed for Tylee Ryan?
9/24/2002.
Okay. Your Honor, the state also at this time would offer to the court State's Exhibit number 6. I would give an opportunity to both give it to the court and to ask the witness to look at it. Original on top, court copy underneath.
I think again I have the original now.
I think they probably all have stickers, Judge. One should say the word original on it.
Okay, mine does not. So
Okay, good.
set the sticker.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks. Thank you. May I proceed, Judge?
Yeah, again, also this has been offered now but not yet admitted.
Well, I was going to have the witness identify it first, but I wanted to give it to you before
Okay.
we did that.
Go ahead.
Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 6?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What is it?
It's a picture of Tylee from her Instagram.
Okay. And is it true and accurate picture of Tylee in her teenage years?
Yeah.
Okay. Move for the admission of State's Exhibit number 6.
Any objection?
May I volunteer an aid?
You may.
You indicate that this is a photograph of Tylee from her Instagram, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you recognize that?
I'm friends with her on Instagram.
You're friends on Instagram with her?
Yes.
Okay. And you saw this pop up on your Instagram?
Yes, I have.
Okay. You didn't take the photograph?
No, I did not.
Okay. You don't know if it's been photoshopped or, I mean, it looks like her, right?
Yes.
But you're not positive that whatever's on the photograph or in the photograph is legitimate. You weren't there when the photograph was taken.
I was not there when this photograph was taken.
Your Honor, the only objection I have is that it's not an original. We don't know who the photographer is. We don't know if it's been photoshopped. We don't know if it's been altered in any way.
All right, understood. Response?
Your Honor, that's not the foundation for the admissibility. If defense counsel's concerns, they go to the weight, not necessarily the admissibility. This witness has said he is familiar with the person who's in the picture, he's familiar with her Instagram, and he knows whether it's a fair and accurate depiction of Tylee Ryan.
All right, I've considered that objection. I think what we have here is it will be admitted for illustrative purposes in terms of evidentiary value without further foundation about who precisely or when took the picture or where. If we're going beyond that, I'd have concerns, so it is admitted for the purpose of demonstrating who is shown in the picture.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is the machine on? Thank you. Thank you. Is that the picture of Tylee?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you indicated that you were aware that JJ and Tylee were missing in the fall of 2019, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever learn whether JJ and Tylee had been found?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Where were you when you learned that JJ and Tylee had been found?
I was in my parents' home in their garage.
Okay.
Sorry, just a second. I was in my parents' home in their garage.
All right. And when you became aware of this issue, did you travel somewhere?
I did. It was the day before my wedding. They weren't certain, so I had my wedding.
Okay.
And then the next day I came up to Rexburg.
Okay. What date was that?
It would have been June 11th.
Okay. Of what year?
Or June. Of 2020.
Okay. What happened once you got in Rexburg?
I drove up. I didn't know why, but I just felt like I should come up, and so I came up, and I met with Larry and Kay and Woodcock, and
did law enforcement ask you to do anything?
yes, they had asked me if I could identify JJ.
And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
How did that happen?
I drove to a place where they showed me some pictures of him and asked if I could identify him, and I did.
Okay. And those were images showed you by Rexburg police officers and FBI agents, correct?
Yes.
Okay. One moment, please, Your Honor. I want to ask you a couple of quick questions to make sure I didn't ask confusing questions. To be clear, what date were you shot at?
October 2nd,
Of what year?
2019.
Okay. And then over the next month or so, you did Google searches?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember when you saw evidence that Tammy Daybell had died?
I want to say that I saw it on October 21st, maybe. It might have been the 19th. I can't say exactly. It's been a few years since then.
Okay.
I should have reviewed that. I apologize.
Sorry. Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Thomas, will you be conducting cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can do so.
Just really quickly, I want to follow up on what Ms. Smith had said. You said on October the 2nd, you were shot at, and then over the next few months, you did Google searches? Is that what you said?
Over the next few months, there was times I did Google searches, yes.
And what were those Google searches about?
Well, the one I think she was referring to was I searched for Chad Daybell's name to figure out who he was and try to get more information on him.
Okay. So you and your then wife, Melanie, were having some issues back in 2018, end of 2018, right? Is that right?
Can you define issues?
Well, I mean, at some point you got divorced, right?
Yeah, but in 2018, I wouldn't say that we were at a point where we were looking at divorce.
Okay. When did that happen? When did the divorce thing come up? In early 2019?
No, not until June of 2019 was the first time it was ever mentioned.
June of 2019. Mm-hmm. And that's when you had gone off to a business trip and had come back?
No, I was not on a business trip.
Okay. What was it?
I took my family and we went to her parents' house.
In Arizona?
In Utah.
Your parents' house?
No, my ex's parents live in Utah.
Melanie's
parents live in Utah, and that's where we were staying, was in her parents' home.
Oh, I see. Okay. And at that point, she said something about she had some issues with you, one of them being that she said that she thought that you were homosexual?
Correct.
And was that based on, what was that based on? Was there any basis to that?
She told me that God had told her.
God had told her that you were homosexual?
Yes.
Okay. It had nothing to do with video that one of your friends had posted on Facebook with you being at the Pink Pony dancing around?
Correct.
Okay. That was something different?
The only thing that happened with that was after a long argument. I asked her to give me some logical reasons because it didn't make any logical sense. And the only thing she could think of was that she had seen a video of me dancing with someone at a Pink Pony Club, which was available to anybody to see on Facebook. It was just public.
And where's the Pink Pony?
Objection, Your Honor. I understand this is cross, but it's getting pretty far afield.
All out at this time. It's proper cross.
It's in Gulf Shores, Alabama.
Okay. And then as we indicated, October 2nd, you believe you were shot at, and you believe that the Jeep that held the gun that was shooting at you was a Jeep Wrangler?
Yes.
And you believe that to be Tylee's Jeep Wrangler?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And you indicated that you had actually tried to follow that Jeep Wrangler, is that right?
For a few seconds, yes.
Okay. And did you get the license plate?
I was not able to get the license plate.
How far away from the Jeep Wrangler were you?
At that point, I was very far away. It was, I barely saw it. It was over at the corner of the neighborhood, and I was very far in a distant corner. I just saw the Jeep had come around that angle, and it turned right around and went the other way.
So how far away was the shot that you think came from? You think it came from the Jeep Wrangler? How far away was the Jeep Wrangler from your car when the shot was made?
The car was parked probably a little further than the distance of where you're at to me.
Me to you?
Yeah, a little bit further.
30 feet, 20 feet?
Somewhere in there.
Okay. And you indicated that only probably 5 people knew where you had lived at the time?
Yes.
And you don't believe this to be a stray bullet or something other than, you're pretty positive that this came from that Jeep?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see a muzzle flash from the Jeep?
I saw what looked like, as I described before, a silencer, but I can't say that I saw the muzzle flash.
And was that in your rear view mirror?
No, it was straight in front of me.
Straight in front of you?
Yeah, I was looking straight at it.
Okay. So you saw a silencer, but you didn't see any type of flash when the shot was taken?
I can't say for certain that I did.
Okay. It's possible that that shot came from somewhere else?
No.
Okay. You indicated, and I think counsel for the state and I were both somewhat taken aback when you said that you knew the VIN number of the Jeep, and you indicated that you were the insurance agent on that Jeep.
I was no longer the insurance agent, but I ran it for Charles. He had given me the information.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he wanted me to price shop, so he gave me the VIN number for each of the vehicles that they had.
And when was that?
A few months earlier, maybe around April.
Okay. And he had done that in an email or a text or something like that?
Yeah, it was just in my text.
Okay. Do you have that text still?
I'm not sure if it was a text or if it was an email. Honestly, I'm not sure exactly how I got that VIN, but I know he gave it to me. He may have emailed it.
Did you? Go ahead.
I'm not certain which way he gave it to me.
Did you turn that information over to the police or to the prosecutor?
I did, yes.
That email?
No, I turned over all the VIN number to the detective at the time.
And they didn't ask you how you got the VIN number?
It was a long time ago. I can't tell you for certain. I just told him the VIN number.
Okay. You indicate that you were rereading some emails from Charles to yourself at some point. Did you turn those emails over to the prosecutor or to the police?
I did, yes.
Okay. And what were those emails about?
The emails were from Charles to the rest of the family, and then some of them were, in his concerns about what he thought was going on in his relationship with Lori as they went through their breakup. And separately, there were other emails that were kind of his evidence that he was giving us of these groups that she was meeting with.
I'm a little bit confused because you indicate that you were rereading emails. I thought, and maybe this is me, I thought they were from Charles to you, not to his family.
I am part of his family. He sent them to all of us.
Okay, so these were group emails that you were a part of the group email.
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay. When you found out that they had found the remains of Tylee and JJ, you indicate that you had a wedding on, looks like June the 10th, and then you went up to Rexburg on June the 11th. Is that right?
Yes, I believe it was the 11th. Might have been the 12th. I didn't review my notes on that either, so I should have.
Okay. And you indicate that you met with Kay and Larry Woodcock?
I did, yes, that morning.
Did you meet with anybody else?
No, I talked to law enforcement over the phone.
Talked to law enforcement over the phone while you were in Rexburg?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't talk to law enforcement over the phone while you were still in Utah or Arizona or where you were living at the time?
Are you talking about on that specific day?
Yeah. Or the day before, or,
I can't recall specifically if I met with them. I don't think I did, but I might have met with them in person besides the phone call. I did meet with them in person when I looked at the pictures.
Okay. And so then you said that law enforcement asked you if you could identify Tylee and JJ?
Just JJ.
Just JJ. And so what was that conversation like? I mean, they didn't ask somebody like Kay or Larry or somebody who was closer to JJ, or they just came to you?
I mean, I think I was as close to JJ as Kay and Larry. We were all family. They had initially asked Larry, but it's a pretty overwhelming task to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it was with his health where it was, if it was something he was up for, so I said I would.
So you were there when they were having the conversation with Kay and Larry about who was going to identify JJ?
I was there after the conversation and talking to them.
Oh, okay. All right. I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Will there be any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, that'll conclude the testimony of this witness then. Thank you, Mr. Boudreaux.
Thank
You
you.
can go ahead and step down from the witness box.
Your Honor, quick question. Mr. Boudreaux does not live in this. Mr. Boudreaux does not live in this state. Is he released from his subpoena?
Any objection?
We're not going to recall him.
Okay,
We don't have any objection.
very well. You can be released from your subpoena as well then. Thank you for appearing and testifying.